Well, thank you, everyone. It is so great to be here with all of you. Thank you, Tom, for hosting this. My fellow panelists, Representative Herseth Sandlin, who, when I first started running for the U.S. Senate, and I'd be at things like Farm Fest, they'd say, well, Stephanie could do it, so I think you could do it. So thank you for that. Senator Grassley is such a true leader, and thank you for your comments about dust and cows, of which I'm in agreement, and also the payment limits, of which we both have supported, and some reasonable ones, but clearly the gross income is not the way to go. I also wanted to acknowledge my good friend Dave Frederickson. You know, I never thought he would want to come and work for me because he was in retirement, and he said he wanted to work for me. I always thought, wow, he wants to make the farm bills coming up. And then his wife finally told me that she wanted to get him out of the house. And one of my biggest joys in life is watching Dave Frederickson learn the BlackBerry. That has been a great thing to see him in the back of the car doing that. And also two people who aren't here that I wanted to acknowledge, Senator Tom Harkin, the chair of our Agriculture Committee in the Senate, and my good friend Colin Peterson, who has taught me a lot. Tom has heard this story before, but when I first started getting interested in agriculture issues, I called Colin. I said, if I drive 4 hours out to meet with you, will you meet with me for 15 minutes? This is when I first started running. He said, yeah. So I drive all the way out there, and he ended up meeting me with me for an hour, and I've got this whole chart set up with all the counter-cyclical payments. I'm like trying to figure out how it all works, and he finally looks at me and goes, you know what? There's only 10 people in the country that really understand all this, and 9 of them live in North Dakota. And I finally, okay, but maybe it's Iowa and South Dakota, too. I think the other one is Colin, but thank you so much. So we're here today to talk about renewable energy and what this can mean to rural America. And I serve not only on the Agriculture Committee, but also on the Commerce and the Environment Public Works Committee that does the transportation funding as well in the Senate. And so it enables me to really be in the middle of this subject. And I really see that the opportunities that we have here. We have challenges. I don't tell you any of that. If anyone's a dairy farmer, the challenges we're facing right now. But we also have amazing opportunities in this energy area. And Senator Grassley did a great job of laying out the issues in a pointed way, but my favorite figure is that the United States spends nearly $400,000 a minute on foreign oil. Much of that is going to countries that we would rather not do business with, and I think we should be investing not in the oil cartels of the Mideast, but in the farmers of the Midwest. I think we should be investing in homegrown energy, and we've got a path and we've got a way to do it. But as Senator Grassley pointed out, we've got a lot of obstacles in the way, and especially now with the new administration, we're going to have to be doing a lot of educating. You're going to have to get out there. We're going to have to get out there and make our points known. We need to chart a new energy path, one that represents smart energy policy, a good economic policy, and a pragmatic environmental policy. And I truly believe that homegrown energy can lead us down that path. You know, the last few months I've been all around our state talking to people about this economic crisis, visiting towns like Hibbing, Minnesota, 550 people laid off in just 1 week, 120 of them, engineering jobs, things like that, devastating for our community. But I've also seen the hope. You know, I've been to the wind turbines in southwestern Minnesota. We have so many down there that they actually opened up a bed and breakfast near Pipestone. So if you guys are looking for a romantic weekend, you can go down there. You wake up in the morning and you look at a wind turbine. That's the package. I've been in small solar panel factories in places like Starbuck, Minnesota, where they made me jump up and down on the solar panels to show that they could withstand hail damage, something they unfortunately put up on their website. And I have truly seen the potential if we put the incentives in place, if we put the policies in place that we need. Starting with biofuels, and I really appreciate National Farmers Union work on this issue. I was there at our joint economic hearing when Tom Bias, he was the star witness. You know, Schumer had him out there, he's sort of questioning the biofuels, trying to show, and just the stuff Grassley was talking about, trying to show that the increase in food prices was due to biofuels. We had the USDA study showing that only 3% of any increase in food prices could be attributed to biofuels, that it was really all about weather patterns, it was all about natural disasters, about exports, about the weak dollar, about all kinds of things. But it had very little to do with biofuels, which you know is just at an infant industry. And I always liken it to the computer industry. industry back in the 70s when we had those big computers in the rooms, and it took time and hard work to get it to the place where it is today, such a thriving part of our economy. We need to do the same with biofuels. Now, one of the things that I'm so glad the Finance Committee is doing this work on tax credits. I also believe that we need to do everything that we can to make sure that the gas stations in this country have the tanks, that we're not using anti-competitive behavior. We've got a piece in there on the Farm Bill that we've got to give transitions to help farmers to transition to this cellulosic idea. We can do it from corn stover. We can do it with switchgrass, prairie grass. We can actually grow it in all over this country in marginal farmland, but we have to do this right. Other thing that I wanted to mention was the waiver we're trying to get on the percentage, the blended fuels. There was it's starting to heat up again. I think it's very important. Senator Thune and I and many others, Senator Grassley, others are leading this fight in the Senate, that we need to go, first of all, to see if we can get up to E12, E13 without much at all of a falderall, given that it's been shown that it doesn't really do anything with the engines, and then to go up to E15, E20, that we get that waiver in place, because we want to make sure that we're meeting the mandates of the legislation for ethanol, and one way to do it is to increase those percentages. I noticed that Ford actually signed on to this, which is great, and we need to get the other auto companies to do so as well. In the area of wind and solar and some of our renewables, waste to energy, key possibility for our farming community, that we have the incentives in place, that we make sure that it includes all kinds of waste, and that we worked already in the economic recovery plan to do some of this with these tax credits, but that we go beyond that, that we make sure there's provisions for small wind and small solar, that it's not just about the big wind farms, so some of our rural communities can see some of the benefits from this as well. That's where we're going with this. And, you know, as Senator Grassley mentioned, we're talking about green jobs. You guys are the original green jobs, and we want to remember that as we go forward. But we also want to put in those incentives. I just believe that kids that grow up in rural Minnesota should be able to live in rural Minnesota. And for me, that means putting the jobs and putting those incentives in place and being smart about how we do this, but a few other things, making sure we have broadband. That was one of my biggest things. After I went around our state and I saw we were 44th out of 50 in the country for the speed of our broadband. Our country, the United States of America, dropped from 4th in industrialized nations for internet subscribership down to 15 in just 8 years. And I'm very glad that the new president has taken on this issue, that we're going to work on this, because otherwise our jobs are going to go to India and to Japan and other places if we don't have the kind of rural broadband that we need. We put $7 billion in this economic stimulus package for that. Another issue I was just talking about this morning, which matters to agriculture, captive shippers. The rates that we're seeing from these railroad companies that are getting more and more exorbitant. It's not right. It's not fair. We just passed a bill out of our Judiciary Committee 14-0, which basically lifted the antitrust exemption so that we can get some better rates. And you know what they do? They price it out to the very end of the line, even though you have competition on a vast majority of the line. So that's something that I'm taking on as well. So as we look at these new energy economy, we have to make sure that we've got those incentives in place. We're fair to our farmers. We also have to look at everything else that goes with it, which is the good internet access, which is the good transportation system, which is roads and bridges that work, and rail that's cost effective. So I look at this as a whole package. I see this as a great opportunity. And I know everyone's struggling right now. I do invite you to come to our office, and you'll see I've got a picture on the wall there, something I've had for a while, and it's a picture of an angel, and they've got the world in their hands, and it says, "In my dream, the angel shrugged, and she said, if we fail this time, it will be a failure of imagination." And then she placed the world gently in the palms of our hands. Well, I don't believe we're going to fail, because I've seen the farmers out there in Minnesota that no matter how tough it gets, keep pushing and pushing. I've seen your leadership at the National Farmers Union taking on some of these big senators from some of these big urban states and telling them the truth and putting the facts out there. And I believe that we're going to be able to get this done. We're going to do it right. But you're going to have to be there at our side, as you have been for so long in the past. Thank you. Thank you to Doug Peterson, my good friend who heads up the Minnesota Farmers Union and has taught me so much, and all my friends from Minnesota. Thanks for including me. Look forward to working with you.